What is going on, Secondhand Talent family? It is your boy Steiner here with another episode of Secondhand Talent with my friend Brian Meslar, aka B Sticky. Welcome to the show, sir.
Good to be here. Thank you for having me, Steiner.
Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to our friends over at Tenacious Toys for the desk candy. Thank you to Mark's Busta for the shirt and the lovely desk paper as well. And folks, if you're not watching on YouTube and you're just listening, that was the sound of paper rustling. I got a little something to say about our friend B Sticky over here. And also go subscribe on YouTube. Why not? B Sticky is a beatboxer and looper extraordinaire, as well as a true renaissance man of the performing arts. B Sticky has been and still is his own lighting effects, marketing, audio whiz, on stage, and in studio producer, teacher, and agent. For 10 plus years, he has relentlessly stormed the barricade that is entering the entertainment industry, looking for entry points in every corner. Through all of his efforts in the realm of performance and entertainment, he has learned the work and full commitment that goes into every single angle. Where B Sticky's efforts have landed him thus far is doing work and making art that has most overwhelmingly positive audience responses. Audiobook narrating and engineering has become his main line of work, while he has been pouring commitment into his beatbox looping music performance. Both have regular moments of audience members urging B Sticky to never stop doing what he does. Now, over 150 plus audiobooks and countless beatbox performances later, he is finally just starting to feel like he is scraping the surface of his mastery. Even though getting recognition enough to turn his passion into a full-time job has been tricky thus far, B Sticky has not hesitated. With some of his biggest concerts and shows being fully self-orchestrated, he will keep creating performance art and enriching the lives of those who grace him with their attendance, knowing the rest of the world will catch on before too long. Until then, he will curate impeccable vibes and celebrate his art every step of the way. Folks, let's welcome B Sticky to the show. It's great to have you here, man. Thanks so much for being on the show. The nice little. I hope I did all right with
Oh,
that
you crushed it.
intro
That
piece.
reminds me, I got to get you that. I got to send some stuff for the audiobook world. Yeah, we could use you.
Well, I mean, we have. Well, I appreciate that. We have. My mother always told me I had a face for radio. And folks, if you're not watching on YouTube and you're just listening, the table looks a little bit different today. Um, this has been an intense sound check. We have been trying to figure out how to get B Sticky's looping machine to run sound into the episode, and it is just not uh, working um, whatsoever. So, unfortunately, we'll incorporate elements of his music in other ways. Keep your eyes peeled for all of that. And let us know what you want to see from this incredible beatboxer slash looper in the comments. In the meantime,
Oh
be
yeah.
sticky. First question we ask all of our guests. First time we met, when I approached you, I said, I have a podcast called Secondhand Talent.
hmm
And you heard that phrase.
hmm
What was the first thing that came to your mind?
Secondhand talent. Well, it kind of made me think of, the folks who might otherwise get not get the proper acknowledgement in the field that are honestly like the biggest and most important asset. All the folks who help really bring the movie magic or stage magic together. I guess that's what I initially thought of when I think of that.
It's awesome, 4 seasons in, and I keep saying this episode after episode. I still get, it's still a unique answer every time, but it just gets so much harder to ask the question because people have kind of this idea now of what of what secondhand talent is. And, you know, typically, yeah, right. Our mottos, we shine the spotlight on the people who shine the spotlights, and typically
Sure. I
we
like that phrase. That's a good phrase
thank you. Thank you
right
very much. And we highlight people who, are around the stage. But when it comes to performers, any band or solo artist such as yourself that's doing all of their own booking, merchandising, promotions, not to mention, shows, load in, load out, setup, driving, all of that stuff. Any band or solo artist that's doing all of that themselves deserves to be on the platform as well because they've got all their secondhand talent, built in.
Oh, yeah. It definitely gives you an appreciation for everyone doing it on the full scale because lugging your all your gear around, getting the lights just so, doing the freaking audio stuff as we were dealing with
Yeah,
today is just
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
there's a reason there are full-time people committed to those jobs who make a living off of it. It's because all of this stuff is very difficult and requires a level of mastery for sure.
I remember very clearly. I mean, longtime listeners, viewers of the show know that the first episode of Secondhand Talent was the first video I ever edited.
Okay.
So this podcast has been a steep learning curve for
Oh my
me.
gosh, dude.
On the way up, doing it all in house, and it I one of and I say this all the time to anyone who will listen. My respect has grown exponentially for those who work full time doing all of the jobs that people who are doing it on their own have to compartmentalize
Mhm.
and not be able to do all of
Yeah.
the whole job.
And it peeks through, even when we do a good job, it's still very clear, like, this wasn't done by someone who this is their living and this is all that they
Yeah.
do.
Speaking of which, we mentioned in the intro that, this is obviously your passion, but it's not all that you do just yet.
Mhm.
What got you into, I mean, of all things, beatboxing and looping, which for the record is something that I absolutely love. I mean, as I'm sure you could tell by the
Yeah,
fun we had
we were
while we
having
while
so
we
much
were having a lot of fun while we were
fun.
setting up. And I'm just so curious, like what was your taste in music, you know, coming up?
Growing up.
And then like what was the music that kind of brought you into this realm?
For sure, for sure. Well, always a great and ridiculous answer for where I first started listening to music. But quite truly, probably like the first person I started religiously listening to and listening to albums of, and like it's like I am into this artist was Weird Al Yankovic.
Mm, and
All day. Any Weird Al Yankovic album was just like there would be time like I was so young when I first
let's
started
go.
listening to him too. He would be doing parody songs, like brilliant parody songs, but I wouldn't even know what the song he was doing the parody of was. I was just like, this is the only version I know.
I discovered so most of my wider music sensibilities came from Weird Al
Oh
and
yeah.
listening to the artists
He
that
covers
he
everything,
parodied.
man. Covers
And
everyone.
my sense of what is, I mean, outside of what I learned, from my parents, which, from mom, it was Dead and Zappa. From my dad, it
There you
was,
go.
Bee Gees and like other
Yeah.
70s stuff. But
Oh,
like everything else, you know,
Weird Al talk.
Weird Al. Weird Al taught me
Yeah.
everything about Weird Al taught me about hip hop.
Yeah.
Weird Al taught
Yeah.
me about country. Weird Al taught me about mashups. Weird Al taught me
Okay.
about polka. I mean, and we
Okay.
used to have an accordion at the
Oh,
house, and
okay.
I would sit and I would try to like it would be me and this massive ass I mean, he is yeah,
Yeah.
far and away my number one. It's
Yeah.
amazing. That's all.
Still killing it, man. He's
Oh
still
yeah, oh
out there
yeah.
freaking just shredding up the
Oh,
stage.
he's,
A million costume changes, got all his bands still. They're just
so
doing
what
it.
what was it about it in particular? Was it just the funniness of it, or was it the fact that, because I know my answer to this, but
Yeah.
I'm very, what was your
It was definitely the funniness was a big factor, especially as like a 10-year-old fella.
like which songs, like
I think about like all the polka medleys for sure, and
mm-hmm,
like Amish Paradise for sure.
mm-hmm,
Anything off of Poodle Hats,
mm-hmm,
anything off of Bad Hair Day too. Honestly,
mm-hmm.
is American Pie. The saga begins, or
Oh,
the
right, right,
the force
right.
whatever he calls
Naboo
himself.
was under an
So
attack.
good.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
think one of the other big factors, though, to his music that always made me delight in it was he very clearly is a lyrical master. Like,
Yeah.
there's some people who are just phoning in the lyrics. They realize they've got a good beat or a good like skeleton to their song. They're like, yeah, just mumble some stuff. But then he was like, I was not only was it funny and well written lyric wise itself, but it almost always was a direct mapping of the lyrics from the actual thing.
Well,
It's such a commitment.
it's great because he had this amazing talent of parodying the artist as well as the
Yeah,
song,
yeah, yeah, you're right.
where he would
Yeah.
like, because he would make music videos for a lot of these,
Yep.
right? And they would be, you think you look at his, Fat and Eat It, he Michael Jackson worked with him
Dude,
on
he
those
loved
on
he
those records
loved
and
Weird Al.
absolutely and you know when you're doing, a shot for shot almost frame parody of the music video for Bad,
Yeah.
which is one of the most iconic videos of all time. I'm like, I mean, and that the suit
So
and that blows up. Your butt is wide, and mine is too. I mean, and
so
ham on
incredible, dude.
ham on whole wheat. I mean, like it's just like I remember because that well, but here's the thing because like with Michael Jackson, what I loved about his music was his ad libs.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
That's what
yeah.
that
Tell
and
he
then
was
like
feeling it.
it was this continuity
Mm-hmm.
that kept it going in
Stuff.
from
Yeah,
verse to verse, from
yeah.
verse to chorus, from
Tied
chorus
everything
that
together.
everything flowed through.
Mm.
And with Weird Al, like he didn't try to reinvent the song.
Mm-mm.
He tried to be like, okay, this is my like do not draw outside the lines,
Yeah,
but within these parameters,
it gave
make it as funny as possible.
yeah, gave him a
Like
headache.
he could have done anything for Pretty Fly for a white guy, but Pretty Fly for a rabbi is the same amount of syllables. It's the same cadence.
Hmm.
It's the same white guy rabbi. I mean, it's even the right way to pronounce it. And as a Jewish kid growing up, hearing, that and then hearing and then learning about Offspring
Yeah.
from that, like it
Oh
was like
man,
what a catapult.
for real. Yeah. Offspring
Like,
is
oh my, like, but I knew
some
about
deep
that.
feels,
But I got right, but that's what pushed me into
yeah.
Offspring was Weird
And
Al
he was doing
as a
it
like
in
as an
perfect
11-year-old.
Offspring style too. It
Right.
was like to a T.
That was the other thing is he got the
Yeah.
styles down.
Oh yeah, every time, still does.
Want to feel good but gain the most? Gotta help yourself to a microdose. At the place but don't want to be psycho? Help yourself to a dose that's micro.
Got a microdose. Got a microdose. Got a microdose. Just a microdose. Ooh, child, there comes a time where to let loose you'd rather unwind instead of full on straight losing your mind.
That's a microdose.
It's I mean, talk about like well, a hell of an influence to have. I mean, it's you mentioned it, it's kind of cliche, but when people ask me who my influences are as a comedian, it's kind of difficult not to be cliche in certain aspects. I mean, who's not going to say that Robin Williams and George Carlin
For real, dude.
had massive influences on how they comedy, you
Legendary.
know, legendary and impactful.
For real.
So, who were the artists that you saw that were impactful that kind of led you to this space in music?
Definitely Reggie Watts would be a big one.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're familiar with
Mm-hmm.
Beardy Man, if you're familiar too.
Sure.
Definitely some of those are like some of the first OG dudes on the scene who inspired me and like it's very funny when my wife and I talk about what led me to the specifically doing the beatboxing looping as consistently and full time as I do. I feel like I just kind of fell into it. Like it was like, oh, I'm having fun with this. And the thing that kind of led me to get one of these was watching Reggie Watts and Beardy Man mess around with them and Tom
Mm.
Thun to a lesser extent. But the thing that she says about it is she's like, oh no, this was always the thing. And this was always good. As soon as you got one, it was gonna be your mission until the end of time. And yeah, I think if I were to give that inspiration, if I were to tip my inspiration hat to anyone on that, it'd probably be Reggie Watts, Beardy Man, and in the newer school, probably Mark Riboulet to an extent.
Nice, right on. Yeah.
Um, yeah, and then just a ton of there's like a whole freaking web of underground beatbox battle dudes who like that's like the thing that they're training for that like the Olympics is the underground beatbox battles that go on like on the national and the international scale.
Mhm.
It's like some of the things that these dudes can do who like fly completely under the radar because that's the only thing they're training for are like mind blowing. So like they definitely made me feel like I couldn't just do this as like a little party trick type of thing. I needed to like fully crack the code
Well,
on
so I mean, because
beatboxing.
what I'm hearing is there's a culture.
Oh yeah, for sure. And like it's so interesting too because when Reggie started it, it was still so new and so outside the box
You know,
that like
I was just gonna say though, when in preparation for this interview, I
uh,
was actually flipping through my old ticket stub album, and I found
okay.
a stub from a show I saw in I think 2010. It was RJD2.
RJD2, that name
And
sounds
that
familiar.
is the first time I ever remember seeing a performer with a sample pad, and he
Mhm.
wore it on his chest
Oh
and
yeah.
was just grooving with it like it was an instrument. And I
Yeah.
just remember, and I thought about that, and you mentioned this, and before we go a little bit further into it, can you let our listeners and viewers know what this is that
Yeah,
we're talking about?
please, all means. This lovely little guy right here. You better be paying me for this, boss. I want a sponsorship situation. This is
Sponsor the
boss.
episode.
Yeah,
Why not?
sponsor
Yeah.
the episode. Sponsor the Be Sticky path to fame. Secondhand Talent and Be Sticky are going to be looking your way. But this is the Boss Loop Station, the Boss RC505 Loop Station. And this fella came out probably like 2016 or something like that. I want to say I was a little late to the party with these, to be honest. Now there's a Boss Loop Station Mark II, which is even a little filthier than this guy and can do even more. The beauty of this machine is this one has been created specifically, I say at least specifically for beatboxers. They took a look at what people needed from the electro harmonics and the other ones that people were using at first, the chaos pads. They're like, okay, let's create something that is specifically for beatbox loopers. And so you literally have how many? I can't even count. 5 channels here.
5, yeah. It
Five
helpfully has the
channels.
number right
Oh
next to
yeah,
it. Yeah.
learning new stuff every day about this thing. But it's got 5 channels that let you just infinitely loop onto them. They'll just decrease the volume by I think it's either 25 or 20% each time you add something new on. So it just softens everything else until you're like one thing will eventually be phased out if you're adding a bunch on there. Then you got your sliders to let them on and off in terms of the. I don't know if you all can hear that. As far as the beat pad goes, you have to kind of jailbreak your system set up, and you can do stuff like that. You got all sorts of functions up here for your voice and stuff. Turn your voice to that bass guitar you're hearing and turn it into like crazy ring modulators and electronic sounds. And then you can use this fella over here to actually stop and mess with.
Want to feel good but gain the most? Gotta help yourself to a microdose. At a place but don't want to be psycho? Help yourself to a dose that's micro.
So it's got a lot of functionality. It's absolutely, in my opinion, made for beatboxers. Um, and they, like I said, they made a Mark II now, and that one is even more fabulous with its modulations. I think it's the same number of loop stations, but you just get all sorts of extra layers of control. Um, if you're a beatboxer and you're looking for a fun tool, highly recommend the Boss 505.
There you have it from the expert in the scene. I mean, it really is. I mean, as a layperson when it comes to the tech, I mean, I've got my little Vault 2 there. And also, speaking of that Vault 2, shout out to Case and Traeger and Sarah Hartman of Real and Bootleg Contraband. They are also the best with a sample pad. that I know around. Folks, listen to Real. Check out their link in the description. I'm gonna try to pop it down there. And I mean, they're making some really incredible music. Kason, Sarah, love you. Big friends of the program. Kason is the one who Kason is actually the secondhand talent of secondhand talent. He's
Okay.
the one who put all of this gear assembly
Uh,
together and
yeah.
showed me how to use it because I mean, how long did it take you? Because I'm still learning new things about my equipment all the time. And if folks watch from the beginning until now, or even listen, I mean, some of the early episodes we've taken down the videos because they're just terrible, but the audio is all up there, but you hopefully can hear and
The
see the
evolution.
progress
Yeah.
as it continues.
Yeah.
Ultimately down the line we'll have a better camera. Might not be, in the home studio, but how long did it take you to kind of to really master? I mean, or would you say that you've mastered this, or is this something that's just kind of a constant state of
This
evolution?
particular machine, I would probably say I have a pretty good mastery on. Of course, I'm going to get the Mark II, and I'm basically going to be a beginner again. But I'm still learning things every day with this guy. The one thing that makes me feel like I might have I might be able to confidently say I've got a level of mastery with it is there was a viral fella on TikTok who used this machine at one point, and I started talking about using the beat pad form, thinking it was just like common knowledge once you've had a little time with this. And he's like, "Oh shit, you know how to do that? I don't even know how to do that with my machine." And I was like, "Wait, you don't really? I thought everyone just had to like to make it happen with this."
You know,
But years. I mean, a year or so of me just spending hours sitting here messing with the thing because I was obsessed when I first got it. It was like I would learn something new and be like, "Oh, how can I use that? How can I use that?" Just like be going crazy.
I was gonna say because at the time of this taping, a little over a year and a half into Secondhand Talent, you know, the setup is fairly mobile. I can pretty much roll in and be ready to start filming an episode within 30 minutes,
Hell yeah,
at this point. But
efficient
it took the full year and a half,
to
and I'm
get there.
still to get there, and I'm still working on it. It's,
Yeah.
it's still a work in progress, and it was really cool, and we'll have some videos up on our social media channels. Follow us everywhere: Instagram at secondhand_talent. I don't know why I put an underscore in there. I'm an idiot, but that's what it is. And Facebook, Secondhand Talent, secondhandtalent.com, YouTube, Secondhand Talent, just Secondhand Talent.
Secondhand talent everywhere, baby.
The fluidity with which you were using that was to me mind blowing, and I like I can. I guess some people may look at like perhaps only thinking about art spaces that I've been in, but as a comedian or a DJ or an interviewer, potentially, perhaps there's a perception that, oh, this person is good at what they're doing and has some degree of, aptitude towards it.
Mhm.
But I certainly don't see that, in myself. I mean, not that I don't have aptitude for it, but I don't like see like every moment as like revelatory pat on the back.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
curious to know how you not how you take criticism, but how do you take approval?
I take it well. I wish I don't know. I feel like it's a fine line to tread, right? You don't ever want to feel like you've got it all figured out, and you want to always acknowledge very wholeheartedly the approval you do get because we got to take the wins when we can get them, and we got to give ourselves pat on the backs every now and again. But I do think it's one of those things where the longer you're at it, the more you start to realize your adeptness with a thing. And then, though they shouldn't, those kind of messages of approval from people kind of they you become a little more deaf to them. You don't hear them as much when you first start. You're like, wow, they really liked me. I have to keep doing this. But I feel like now folks tell me like I'm good with this machine. I'm like, ah, thank you. Yep, took a long time to get there.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think the moments I really like now, the approval milestones, so to speak, are when I'm messing with my machine and I have a moment of like, ooh, oh, okay, buddy. Okay, you knocking this up another notch.
It's actually kind of fascinating you say that because as again, I've grown it with this with secondhand talent. There will be some interviews where I'll sit back after a final cut and just kind of be like, "Oh, I
Checkmate.
feel like this might be like journalism." Like
Yeah,
I like
it
I
is.
think
It
what
really
I'm
is.
like is this actually a podcast and I'm not just saying it? I don't know if this like that's a recurring I keep bringing this up. I don't know why, but I don't even know if this is a podcast. Like I'm calling it a podcast because
Yeah. It's like a sit down interview, if not a podcast.
well, I think that what you do is exemplary of that anything can break through to become something interesting and unique, fun.
Yeah, most definitely. And it's one of those things where even some of my, I don't want to say throwaway tunes, but tunes where I'm, because as I think I've mentioned to you before, but my like crown jewel of the act is I'll specifically go to the audience, give me some words, something that makes you happy. And the audience will be like, melon. And then I'll just freestyle a whole song about melons and like do a bunch of verses about melons and shit for them. Um, there will be some of those songs that I'm like, oh, yeah, it was whatever. But someone will come up to me afterwards and be like, yo, where can I download that song again in
Yeah.
my life? And I'm like, oh shit, okay, let's go. Yeah, I think the place I can track it the most, to your point of just like noticing my evolution,
Sure.
is in my tracks I release too.
Okay.
I'm gonna be releasing one very soon. Get ready to check it out on
Links in
Spotify.
the description.
Hell yeah, I'm gonna be sending them to Steiner, you best believe. But we're gonna have a new track, Microdose, coming out. That one's just gonna be a single. And just the way that my songs were when I first started, honestly, the first album I ever released has a really good sound quality to it, but it took me forever to do.
Hmm.
The second one I kind of cranked out and it had an element of me doing them live on stream for people, but the quality dip is there. It's like the first time I'm trying to kind of like seamlessly mix things in the studio that happened in a live environment.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's kind of like it's there, but it's not there. And then with this most recent track, I found the best of both worlds, and the amount of time it took me compared to the first album was like, okay, I've got a system down here
Yeah,
now.
right. Like
This sounds nice.
you start to get a point where you're just like you have your regimen.
Yeah. So it's always good to be able to look at the trajectory and be like, okay, we're getting better
Yeah,
at
yeah,
this
yeah,
thing.
yeah. We're doing this, guys. Let's go, people. Okay, we're doing good.
Gotta get it figured out.
Doing real good over here, folks. So, in addition to performing, you've also done a lot around the stage. Talk us through some of your what are some of the other things that you're involved in?
Well, it's definitely been a wide span going everything from production assistant work to trying to get our own indie film stuff going. Um, Definitely the audiobook engineering opened up a whole can of worms of needing to understand how audio worked on such a fundamental level. Let's see. What else have
Well,
I done?
let's stick on the audiobook
Yeah,
engineer.
yeah.
How did you get involved in that?
So speaking of all the other side gigs and other outer
That's
work.
definitely something we haven't covered on this show
Yeah.
before is audiobooks.
I know there's the amount of people who I run into are like, I have never met someone who does that before. It's more often than not. But and that's I mean, that's exactly where I was with it when I first discovered it too. I was a production assistant on a Jack Daniels commercial with another fella, and he kept like kind of being overly talkative about like this audiobook work that he was doing and this site he was doing it through. So finally I was like, all right, so what is this like the only thing you do? This and that? And he's like, yeah, this and little odd jobs like this. And I was like, Sounds pretty nice. I would love to
Oh,
just work from home in my underwear. Like, let's go.
yeah.
And I dipped in at first, and like it was one of those things where you can see the potential, but you got to just be willing to put in a little bit of the legwork. And like there is always the option to hire someone out to do the audio engineering for you. And I was like, man, I want to just be the 100% profit. I just want all of that myself. But right out the gate, I was already like, even before I knew what I was doing on the audio side of things, I was having people reach out to me with jobs. So I was like, okay, there's something here. This is actually like if I figure out what I'm doing, I'll be actually getting consistent and good paying jobs from this.
So you essentially just had to learn how to fine tune audio
Oh
and
yeah.
really work with that, and then that pretty much opened the door for you for the
Oh yeah.
industry.
The door was cracked wide open once I officially figured it out, but gosh, the first like couple months probably of trying to just like understand how it worked. Oh, I cannot tell you how many chapters I needed to re-record, sometimes three times. Just like
Wow.
so many wasted hours where my wife would sometimes come home and just find me like on the ground, like shaking with a bottle of whiskey, just like, no, please, I can't speak to anyone right now.
Please don't call me Ishmael.
I can't have anyone call me Ishmael right now. Yeah,
Oh man, that's wild though.
uphill battle.
And I mean, you mentioned, so that's I mean that's already I mean, I would imagine your expertise with audio as far as your beatboxing factored into your ability to be able to scale to understanding how to adapt to the audiobook world.
It definitely helped. It's so wild which ones help me where. Um, the beatboxing helped me so much with the narrating side of the audiobooks because until you really start diving into beatbox, you don't realize the depth of your vocal instrument. And you, as an impressionist, I've heard your work, I've heard your mastery.
Thank you, thank you.
You
I
know,
do my best.
that's up there.
That's up here. It's right over here where you're talking from, and you're using a bit of your nasal passage
Yeah, get that little
for
throat
making
moving.
sure you're regulating it with your chest.
Spot on. Spot
Thank you.
and those
I,
types of
I
things
never do that. Jesus, wow.
it lets you know like, oh, there's all this stuff going on
There's
up in here.
so much to work with,
Yeah.
and folks, check out towards the end of season 2 our interview with Keith Harper, who's a vocalist, and really kind of breaks down a lot more of the mechanics of what it takes to utilize your voice. I mean, it really is. It is an instrument.
Yeah.
I personally refer to the voice as the first instrument,
100%.
and I think that really it's just like any other instrument where you would be learning scales or chord progressions or anything like that. You're just learning how to expand and utilize the room that already exists
Yep. Yep.
within you.
And the amount of layers to unlock are so heavy. I'll never forget for me on the beatboxing side of it, the one that took me so long to do, and I literally changed nothing about how I was doing it. It was just the fine muscles of my mouth that changed, but the lip roll, oh no. That one, I would sit there just forever until finally, like one day, I nailed it, and I like went to a bunch of people. What I was
Like
talking about.
that,
I was like,
like
guys, they're like, okay.
that's all right. Yeah, that's not easy to do. Goddamn, that's
That one took so long. And that was like, once I finally learned just doing the same thing I was doing the whole freaking time, I was like, holy shit, okay, this instrument has a lot of fine pieces to it.
so I can kind of relate to it in the sense of like, if we take Cleveland as our example.
I can talk like this, and it kind of sounds like him. But if you unlock to a certain extent, it sounds a little bit fuller, but not quite there.
And then if you really think about it and go for the fullness of it,
Oh, Peter. In case you didn't know, the red balloon tied to the mailbox is the international symbol for party over here.
I mean, and it's being
Party over here. I mean, get like flexing the depth of it, and I'm not getting it right there. I can hear it like out loud that it's not like perfect, but there's so much flexibility. Party over here, party over here, party over here, party over here.
Yeah.
I mean, like, Kermit the Frog lives right over here.
Yeah.
And Swaddle just right over here.
Yeah.
Let's just step around.
Yeah.
Joe Swanson is just dropping your voice. You're talking from the bottom of your voice box.
Yeah. It's these
You know,
little tiny adjustments.
they're little tiny adjustments, but I mean, they require such skill to master.
Yeah, and they require really communicating with all the freaking muscles up in there. Yeah, so definitely the beatboxing helped me figure out how to unlock more voices with the narrating and just be like, because I do a lot of fantasy books, and it's like, okay, I need to have like 14 different character voices that are at least distinct enough to be able to tell apart.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah, sure. Well, one thing I heard, I forget exactly where I heard, is that if you could do a great impression of one character, you're an impressionist. If you could do a bad impression of someone no one knows, then you have a new character. And I always thought that that was fucking fascinating because, like, you're right. Like, if I could do like a great impression of Bill Clinton, like I could do a great impression of Bill Clinton. But if I could do a shitty impression of Rand Paul, like that's something that's just like different
Yeah,
from what anyone would
it's a
know.
voice.
It's
It's
just
unique.
a unique
It's a
voice
character.
that's a character.
Yeah,
It's something that is its own.
yeah. I definitely it's really wild watching how all of the different ones, how all the different angles play into each other. I think the one that delighted me the most was picking up DJing with a deck for the first time.
Mm,
Having done this guy for years, it was like I was already messing around with all my sliders and faders and the audiobook narrating and specifically the engineering side of that allowed me to look at those spikes running by each other of audio and be like, okay, that's what I'm mixing up. And then randomly, just to top it all off, my knowledge of music theory from my days as a young lad playing trombone were like was like, oh, these are measures, these are chord progressions, this is what we got going
yep.
on. All tied together. It's like, oh wow, I'm really picking this up quick.
Yeah, right. And all of a sudden it's just like, oh shit, right, the car's moving and I'm driving it. Let's fucking go.
Let's drive. We're going to Cincinnati, motherfuckers. Yeah.
Look out, Cleveland.
Look out, Cleveland.
Look out, Cleveland. The storm's coming
Help
through.
yourself to a microdose.
All right.
Have a drug doing friend who has no chill? Make their dose micro against their will. Have a first timer friend feeling scared? Microdose a journey so they feel prepared.
Whoa, kid, we all know you're bad, but falling in your spew makes your act look sad. Only one thing to do, I know you'll be glad.
Try microdose.
So what got you into the mind space to start recording your own music and releasing it? Because it's one thing to get the tech and be into it and perform, but especially given the live nature of what you do, where did the inspiration come from to start creating, tracks to release? And when did that start?
Let's see. So I guess I first released the album. I don't know. I guess the two kind of came wrapped together. Part of me was thinking about how I would do this, and I don't think I had the idea to do improvised songs with it when I very first gotten, I mean, my original machine, not even this guy, but the Electro Harmonics, the one Reggie used to use back in the day. The first thought I feel like that hit my mind was I got to hit the ground running with it on such a big level. I got the machine and like figured out how to use it to some degree. And this connect that I had that ended up actually landing me some of my most exciting film gig things and working as a set assistant on stuff where I got to meet like actual stars and stuff. He was putting together this musical comedy night at the Apollo Theater, and he had one of my pals being the overall host for it. And my buddy was like, yeah, I have 2 sets I can get you in on, but I also need you to sub in. I need you to cover me as host for 2 nights. So I already had a freaking 4 set run at the Apollo Theater
Oh,
with this for the
fucking
first time doing it.
wow.
So in my mind, I was like, I need to make songs. I need to have an album. Otherwise, people are gonna be like, who the heck is this guy? He doesn't have anything to offer us. So I just like cranked out my first album. I mean, it felt so easy to do just because I'd never had a machine that let me create a song myself and layer my stuff. So like coming up with my songs was a quick and easy enough experiment. But honestly, like to answer your question and double back around, like I got the machine, I got that 4 set run, and it was like, okay, I need songs in order to have some. So I started recording right away. I think I didn't really start leaning into the like, oh, I need to release tracks side of things until I realized that that was the only way I could get traction with this act.
Mm.
It's like I was able to, I knew enough people in the musical comedy world and in the like the open mic night and stage world where I was able to get acts and get my performances out there, but to get it on more of a grand scale and really kind of get myself into a place where I'd be able to work with other artists who I really liked. I was like, I need to have tracks. I need to have like a presence that's out there. That was kind of thing. Probably like 5 or 6 years ago, I first was like, okay, we need to start releasing albums on Spotify, on SoundCloud, on Bandcamp, all the places people are listening to music.
I mean, and at the time of this taping, there's a single about to come out, but you can find the link in the description, and there'll be links to all of the Sticky's music down there. And where's some upcoming performances that you got going on that will be shouting out, I guess, in the
Yeah.
future or the past?
Yeah. So that being said, at the time you'll all be viewing this, we'll be just about to get into the summer again. And I think you know, trajectory wise, I think I just gotta make it a little easier on myself, maybe like a couple less sets, but I'm definitely gonna be doing like a summer beach sunset run again, most likely on
Nice.
Loyola Beach. Definitely feel free to
Nice.
come check those out.
Oh yeah.
Always get a nice little after party going that I'll DJ to, or my roommate will DJ. Um, but we'll probably still be in the midst of at the time of this podcast, and this some we'll get a link to. And I will have been doing it throughout the winter. This is like where my trajectory is heading, seeing as I don't have too many upcoming shows going into winter and fall. I'm going to unveil and start doing YouTube live shows, actually.
Oh, hell yeah.
And I want the first one to be a full event. I want to have performed and rehearsed like a set list with new songs in it, including the one that's about to drop, and build up kind of like a really good hype with that first set. Which will probably be sometime, probably will have happened at this point, or probably sometime in November. But by the time y'all are checking in with us, hopefully I'll have this thing running efficiently, and you can come check up on the YouTube Live Be Sticky show at some point.
Well, we're looking forward to it. And be sticky, I gotta say, this is a wild, zany conversation. We had a lot of technical adventures getting set up, and it was worth every one of them. It was such a pleasure to have you on on the show. Thank you so much for
Pleasure to
being
be here,
on.
Steiner. Thank you for having me, everybody.
This has been Steiner with another episode of Secondhand Talent, and we will see you next Wednesday. It's a podcast. And we're out.